Hi, everyone, and welcome to 5 Surprising Reasons Why Service Improvement Efforts Fail. My name is Arnold Smith, and I am the founder of the Inspiring Manager Collective and the president of Connection Apps, Inc. And I specialize in helping organizations create inspirational leaders at every level of their organization. And this particular presentation is really about how do you create inspirational leaders at the front line, who interact with the customers. And every organization really wants to have excellent service, and many invest a ton of time in making that happen. And yet, for many people, anecdotally and statistically, customer service results are going down. So this presentation is maybe going to highlight some of the perhaps surprising reasons why these improvement efforts fail. And I think that even if I get one reason here that's perhaps surprising to you, then this time will have been well spent. So we'll go ahead and get started. Now, before we get too far into this, I think it's important to understand what I mean by service excellence, because service excellence isn't just for your customers. It's also for your employees. And so service excellence is about creating a culture that prioritizes both employee and customer satisfaction, leading to long-term loyalty and success. So I think for most people, they understand why they would invest in service, but I just want to highlight it because I think it's really important. Sometimes leaders view improving or investing in customer service as an expense, but it directly correlates to higher profit. It correlates to increased revenue, enhanced organizational effectiveness, which reduces cost, and lasting success, which is what every organization wants. I want to talk about how that actually happens. So the first thing is, when you deliver excellent service, it will lower your customer acquisition cost. Happy customers talk to people, and you will generate word of mouth referrals. Now, I put potentially to zero, and there's many small organizations or small businesses who, after a certain amount of time, simply no longer invest in marketing. Now, for someone starting out, that might seem very remarkable because they're investing a lot in acquiring new customers. But when you can deliver the kind of experience where people are referring their friends and family, after a while, you have enough of those customers that it generates all the customers that you want. Now, for bigger organizations that want to continue to grow, they will continue to invest in marketing, but it requires growth to service all those customers. So it has a huge benefit, really investing in service excellence. Number two, it actually increases the average sale per customer. There's only a few ways to increase your profit. You decrease expenses, which can be risky because you might take away funding for something that's actually generating profit. You can get more customers, or you can get more money per customer. And when a person is delivering excellent service, they will be able to meet the needs of your customers more thoroughly, and that translates into increased amount of sales per customer. So that's the money-making side. But it also reduces employee turnover. So when you have excellent service, both internally and externally, people want to stay. And I'll show you in a couple of slides why that's so important to your overall profitability and success as an organization. And the last thing is it attracts top talent. When your internal service matches your external service and you have happy employees, they talk to each other. What's it like working for is going to be a question and a conversation that people have. And depending on how that is answered, that's going to make a difference for your ability to attract top talent. And so these are some of the reasons and ultimate results that happen when you invest in delivering service excellence, both internally and externally. So this is a great slide. It just basically shows that, 3 times more people talk about bad service as opposed to good service. And so even if you have one bad experience, that person potentially is going to talk to 3 people. And there's lots of research out there about how many people you talk to, but what people know for sure is they talk about their bad service more than their good service. So it's really important to invest and make sure that everybody has a good experience. I thought this was a good slide that kind of showed a more in-depth of like, how does it happen that your customer acquisition cost gets reduced when you invest in customer service. This is from HubSpot, which I'm a fan of their company. I think they do a great job. But ultimately, you reduce churn. So instead of having customers come and then go, you have customers come and then stay. And when they're happy, they talk about and they bring other customers. Eventually, what that means is that you have to invest less money to get the same number of customers or even more customers. So this is a cumulative process. The more that you have happy customers, the less you have to invest in getting new ones. Unless you're interested in unlimited growth, then they just support each other. Now, employee turnover is a massive issue. And one of the challenges is that when an employee leaves, the cost of that rarely shows up on the income statement. But having top talent, well-trained and staying with your organization, even having good talent, staying with your organization over the long term has a huge impact on your long-term success and profitability. This is from a Forbes article, and perhaps it's a bit dramatic to have 400% of someone's annual salary for a top-level position. But when you really dig into the impact and the cascading effects of that, and I have worked with organizations where the cost of employee turnover is massive. So it has a huge impact on your ability to compete for your long-term success. So making sure that people don't go should be priority number 1. This is only slightly correlated with improving customer service, but when you're investing in service, you're investing in enhancing performance. And quite simply, 200 companies, an 11-year period, and the 12 firms that had performance enhancing cultures experienced a net income growth of 756%. Now, Harvard Business School professor, that's a reasonably, good source of information. I really like this study because it really shows the impact when you invest in the performance of your people. And service is a big part of that. So meeting the expectations is just the starting line of service excellence. When a customer comes and is adequately served, it's not going to inspire them to tell their neighbors or at the party that night to say, I had this experience. It will just kind of come and go. And obviously, you do need to meet that bar. And oftentimes, we're not meeting that bar. And then you get people speaking the other direction. But it is just the starting line. So getting above that is really the basis for kind of getting all those benefits. All right. I just want to say thank you for being here. I know that in your busy day, it takes a lot to make time for non-urgent conversations. So I really appreciate you being here. And, I'm really passionate about helping people to have the best possible experience of work. And so your being here helps me fulfill my passion. I want to give a note about how to participate. When you're talking about customer service, most people relate to it like, I already know that. And some of the things that I say, you might be like, yeah, I know that too. Try and come with a beginner's mind. Try and see what might be slightly out of your view, what you might not be thinking about. So rather than immediately say, I know that, see, is there any of that leaking into my organization? So the more that you can apply what I'm saying to your life right now, not how you want it to be, but how it actually is, the more benefit you're going to get from being here. If you have any questions, please save them to the end. I'll take some time for discussion for anybody who's here. And I also just want to acknowledge that I'm on the unceded territories of the Kakite First Nation here in New Westminster, BC, Canada. Just a quick bit about me. I actually hate talking about myself, but I think it's kind of important for people to understand some context about where I'm coming from. Past 20 years I've spent in leadership roles with various organizations. I really have experience both as an employee, as a manager, as the executive director of a not-for-profit. So when profit isn't the motivation, I understand what that's about. And as a business owner, when you're the one writing the checks, it really opens your eyes to some of these things. And so I have experiences all of those, and so that's kind of where I'm coming from. Ultimately, I'm about business and organizational success, and to me that comes down to three things: culture transformation, people development, and service excellence. Worked in many industries, had a great career that way, professional services, hospitality, construction. So I really am able to relate to a lot of different people in terms of the training. And lastly, about 5 years ago, I started developing a software that helps people take action. The problem that I saw is that in consulting and in training, it didn't matter how good the information was. It didn't matter how inspired people were in that moment. If you didn't help them take action after, then there was very little value that was obtained from that training. So I didn't want to just give people great information. I wanted to make sure that that information was implemented into their routines so they had lasting results. It's a big, big difference between knowing something and doing something. Otherwise, there would be no such thing as a weight loss industry, because the secret to weight loss is simply burn more calories than you consume. Everybody knows that. So today's agenda, what we just went through, is why invest in service excellence. We've done that. Now I'm going to get into the 5 surprising reasons why efforts fail. And then I'm going to spend a little time talking about how to go from knowing to doing, something that I'm very passionate about. So how do you take this information and make sure that people actually do it? And then the last thing is I have a program, obviously, for delivering and helping organizations increase their service. And I'm going to talk a bit about that. Okay, surprising reason number 1. Let's see if this is a surprising reason. It may or may not be. A financial motivator was used. For many organizations and people, we think that the ultimate motivator is actually financial, and research does not support that. One of my favorite authors on motivation is Dan Pink, who's written many great books, Drive, To Sell is Human, The Power of Regret. And here's a quote from him: "Money can extinguish intrinsic motivation, diminish performance, crush creativity, encourage unethical behavior, foster short-term thinking, and become addictive." And yet, financial incentives for improving performance are often the go-to for most organizations. Now, there are certain circumstances where financial incentives work, but in all the research suggests, and there's a great study from the London School of Economics, they talk about how unless the task is incredibly simple and mechanical, that requires no creativity, no thought, and no innovation, then financial incentives actually decrease performance. So they either don't have an impact or they decrease performance. And that is not the experience of most people. So if you want more information about that, I really suggest you watch Dan Pink's TED Talk on the subject. It might really open your eyes and help you dig into more of the research. The other thing that happens is that people motivate using company goals. And I hear this all the time, and it kind of makes sense. It says something like, we want to hit our company targets, we set off, we want to achieve all the goals we made for you. When you created your goals, we want to make sure you achieve those goals. And ultimately, when you say that, here's what people hear. They say here, if you give great service, go above and beyond and make that make that extra effort, I'm going to make a lot of money. And if I can trust you to do it consistently, I get to take more time off to travel, golf, and spend time with my family. Of course, this is a bit of a funny meme. And I know that from a leader's perspective, it makes sense. Like, hey, if we all work together to make the organization successful, then you'll be successful too. And of course, that is mostly accurate. However, there is usually a mistrust between how much of that money actually trickles down to the front line and the amount of benefit that is received from this excellent service in comparison isn't changed. Now, maybe there's an organization that splits the money 50-50 and then people are like really motivated. I'm sure that's out there. However, using company goals to motivate is an external motivation, and you really want to figure out how you can create intrinsic motivation, how people can be intrinsically motivated to deliver excellent service. And money simply doesn't do that. Surprise. Surprising reason number 2. The desired behavior isn't modeled internally. Oftentimes, organizations think that, well, I've told them how to serve our customers, and so they'll do that regardless of what's happening in the organization. I thought this comic was quite funny. What did I tell you about wearing that? Do as I say, not as I do. People will do what you do or what the people around them are doing, not what they say we want to do. And the amount of effort it takes to create an internal service excellence culture is less effort in the long run than overcoming a poor internal service environment and then trying to force people to always deliver a higher level of external service. When you have created an internal service environment that matches how your external service environment is or you want it to be, then you will have achieved an equilibrium that will just support that ongoing. And so it takes some time to do that, but once you have that and you continue to support that, then you'll no longer need to give any effort to trying to force people to deliver service excellence because that behavior will be modeled internally. There's a quote from Diana Dosick, who also has a great TED Talk. This statistic I thought was pretty wild. Companies spend 1,000 times less understanding and shaping the journeys of the people they depend on most, their own employees, as opposed to the amount of money and time they spend understanding their customer's journey. And so her suggestion, and I concur, is that you want to spend as much time understanding your employees' journey and their pain points as you do for your customer's journey and their pain points. All right, surprising reason number 3, people are unhappy. Wait a minute. Why should that make a difference? Well, here's maybe perhaps, oh, you think that people with mental illness should just snap out of it? It's like telling someone who is deaf to listen harder. I think that many people have a greater understanding that when people are dealing with mental health issues, it isn't just simply a matter of snapping out of it. There was definitely a time in the past where, if that's your business, you deal with that. When you're at work, you're getting paid. You don't get to have your mental health issues here. And I think there's a greater understanding of that just doesn't fly anymore. And in fact, there's a 30% increase in people taking leave, extended leave due to mental health issues than even 1 year ago. So consider this. This is the funny part here, hopefully funny. Look, I know your dog died and your car broke down. You're living on someone's couch because you aren't making enough money for a proper apartment. And you can't afford to go out with your friends because it's too expensive and you're lonely. And, I think it's great that you're taking those courses at night to try and better yourself so you can earn more money, but you're coming to work tired. And, I know you're depressed because, of course, there's that war and there's this pandemic. Society's more divided than ever. And the future looks so bleak because, as a organization or as a society, we keep making money above, taking care of our planet. And I know that things are already unaffordable and just getting more expensive. But hey, you need to leave that stuff at the door when you come to work, have a positive attitude, and give your absolute best. Oh, yeah. And I know that your chair is uncomfortable and your computer is slow. And I know your phone receiver is crackling. And, we did, put those cameras in. So now we're filming you at work. And of course, you're having your keystrokes tracked. And that report that you have to do, that redundant report that puts you chronically behind targets, that were obviously created by people who actually never done your job. And the one you have to give to your manager but even though he never looks at it, hey, we are 0.5% off our historically high profits. So, we can't possibly afford to improve your working conditions. Here's how you should view it. You should look at those conditions as a nice challenge and just reframe your frustrations as an opportunity for growth. It simply isn't helpful. It isn't going to happen. When people are unhappy, it's really hard for them to generate positivity and caring and empathy. They're just simply distracted by their own misery. Consider this really somewhat depressing statistic. The rate of individuals reporting symptoms consistent with major depression in the past 12 months increased 63% in young adults 18 to 25. Who are your most likely customer service reps? They're going to be in this category. And this is 2017. You think that that's bad then, it is way worse now. So this is an issue. Employees' mental health and well-being is one that isn't going away. And one of the most important skills that leaders need to have is the understanding of how to truly impact well-being and health. All right, reason number 4, a lack of emotional intelligence. Here's the leader talking to their team. You know how you wish that we as leaders could be like extraordinary listeners and we even get the meaning of what you're saying, even when you say it wrong, and be able to kind of sense how you're feeling and say the perfect thing, even though you never actually say how you felt. Oh, and we also to be aware when your behavior is being influenced by your irrational fears and help you overcome those fears and become more courageous and confident. You know how you want us to do that? It's just a little bit too hard. I mean, as a manager, I've got all these demands on my time, and it's just, I can't quite get there. So you understand, I'm just a bit too busy to do that. But of course, we want you to be able to do that with our customers. This is a moderately humorous meme. But the reality is that improving emotional intelligence isn't easy. And it actually takes a lot of time. Young people, simply don't have the same emotional intelligence as more mature people do. We learn that through life experience. And yes, you can wait for people to learn those skills, and you can hope that people have learned those skills, or you can accelerate that process by actually helping people develop their emotional intelligence. I mean, consider this. This is the 5 components of emotional intelligence, like managing your impulses, soothing yourself and responding appropriately, making sure you have yourself motivated, self-awareness, be aware of your emotions as they arise, understand the source of those emotions, understand, what trauma, how your trauma is affecting your behavior, having empathy and understanding the feelings, needs, and wants and concerns of others. That's challenging for everyone. And when you don't include training for emotional intelligence with your customer service efforts, they're bound to fail because there's going to be gaps. So make sure that there's a combination, that you're training people in their emotional intelligence, understanding how to do that. Most importantly, that number one, self-awareness. How do they manage and understand what's going on internally? Because that is a process that is a process of a lifetime. And the sooner that you can help people achieve that, the more likely they're going to be able to deliver that same level of service to your customers. Surprising reason number 5. Maybe these aren't surprising reasons. Hopefully, at least one of these has been a bit of a surprise, or at the very least, a nice reminder. Expectations aren't clear. Even if you've told them 1,000 times. You know, one of my favorite quotes is from Bernard Shaw. The problem with communication is the illusion that it has happened. I thought this meme was pretty good. If you could do the opposite of what I asked for yesterday without acknowledging that I totally wasted your time, that'd be great. You know, oftentimes a boss will say, I just want you, you know, my expectation is that you will always do what I would do if I were in your shoes. And also, you know, kind of depending on my mood. Of course, the mood part is a bit of a joke. And then they say, just use your common sense. But common sense isn't common. And so each person has a different journey, and what they instinctively know is going to be different than what another person instinctively knows. So it's just not clear. Common sense is not clear. So here's how you know for sure if your expectations are not clear. Number one is they are not written down. If, you know, maybe I'll give the exception. So if I came into an office and the service expectations weren't written down, but I asked someone like what's expected in terms of how often or when you should get back to people, and everybody knew exactly the answer, or I said what's expected in terms of how you treat each other or jumping in, and everyone knew the answer instantly, then I would say maybe it's talked about enough that they don't need to be written down. But writing them down has a big difference. Even then, I'm not sure I'd buy it. The second thing is they're long and complicated. I've been through the inclination to write a if this, then that instruction guide to customer service. And, you know, like the idea of being able to address every single circumstance with your guide is probably unattainable. And so, I mean, you're in that circumstance and you're like, oh, what am I supposed to do in this? And you go back to your manual and you try and find the instructions. It doesn't create that connection. And it generally doesn't result in the kind of service. And it's a huge amount of effort to train someone new when they get into that. Go home and study this manual. So it's not necessarily going to create the results you want. Definitely explore that, have conversations about that. But if you have that long list, it's not necessarily going to be clear on what people are supposed to do. I'm a big fan of values-based instruction. Yes, it is slightly more ambiguous, and you would think that expectations are less clear. But it actually, when you can up-level to a value-based system, people will start to understand how you want to be. And the conversations can then be about how do you meet that. And eventually there's an understanding of how we are. You know, we need to be transparent. Was this transparent? Was it not transparent? So again, the HubSpot culture code, give them another plug here. Life is short. I really like that one. I'm also going to jump over here. This is the University of Miami Service Standards. And so this is an example of not too complicated. And so you've got 4 values: safety, caring, responsiveness, and professionalism, a slight description, and then some examples. This is the format that I would recommend that I use with my clients when I'm helping them develop service standards, is a small amount with a few examples. When you have that, it gives people enough autonomy that they can deliver the service that you want. All right, so that's the 5 reasons. Maybe they were surprising, maybe they weren't. I'll just go through them quickly. Motivating with money. Sometimes I'm hoping that was a surprising one. Maybe you already knew that. But when you try and motivate with money, it can actually decrease performance. So finding that intrinsic motivation is key. No internal modeling. Easier said than done, I know. But you really want to have your internal service match your external service. People are unhappy. Investing in people's well-being is going to have a big difference in terms of the service they can provide. The reality is that without ever saying anything, how you feel is communicated 100% of the time. It is part of how humans interact with their environment and with others. It is an instinctive threat assessment to understand how people feel. And it is below the level of consciousness most of the time until it needs not to be, but you'll still feel that. And so if people are unhappy, that is going to translate into how they deliver their service to your customers. And how your customers are going to be left feeling is a little unhappy, even if they delivered the service perfectly. And as most people will say, people remember how you made them feel. Number 4, a lack of emotional intelligence. Really investing in helping people understand and unpack how they're feeling to mitigate their emotions has a huge impact on the success and understanding of how do you meet the needs of your customers. So when you help people understand how to meet their own needs, they in turn understand how to meet others' needs. Finally, unclear expectations. Delivering clear expectations is critical, and if it isn't written down, you're doing yourself a disservice and you're creating more work in the long run. I urge you that if you are going to create service standards, that you include the people who are delivering the service, because that will have a big impact on their willingness to follow those rules, and you're more likely to get a set of standards that can actually be followed. All right, that is the 5 surprising reasons. Now that you know, all your service improvement efforts will succeed. If that were true, that'd be great. Unfortunately, knowing isn't enough because only new actions create new results. So I've spent a ton of time understanding the difference between education and behavior change. And I just want to give some insight about how do you achieve behavior change instead of just education. So the first thing I want to talk about is the FOG behavior model. Understand how action occurs. There's 3 elements for every action that you do and that everyone does. First of all, you must be motivated to take action. Second of all, you have to have the ability to take action. And finally, there's a trigger to make that action happen. Most of the time, that trigger is below our level of awareness. And so when it comes to taking action, we are not aware of what triggered our behavior. But in terms of behavior change, it's critical to understand that all behavior has a trigger. Now, keeping motivation high and giving people the how to do things means that your triggers will succeed more often. If people have low motivation and what you're asking them to do has a level of difficulty, even if they're reminded to do it, they won't take action. Actions will fail. So triggers fail here. BJ Fogg is a great, he's a Stanford professor. His book is Tiny Habits. And so when you're building in these efforts, make sure you're building in the trigger. And I love the way Fogg talks about it. If or after I will. After I sit down at my desk, I will send a message of appreciation to one of my team. When you build that into your routine, as soon as you sit down at your desk, you'll be reminded to do that. And so using your triggers that are already embedded into your routine will create more opportunities for doing. So traditional training programs kind of look like this. You're going to sit down, you're going to the classroom, you're going to learn a whole bunch of things. And then there's not a whole bunch of support after. So you did that half day of training, you did that workshop, went for 3 days. And leadership training's famous for this. Go for that 3-day workshop and you just have, it's life transforming. You talk about it, it's like the information was great. And yet, down the road, your behavior hasn't really changed all that much, because it really takes ongoing support in order for behavior change to happen. The focus of those programs is on knowing. So what works and what my programs really focus on is the doing. And what that takes is timely reminders, a reminder at a moment when you can actually take action. Reminding people at 7:30 or at 9 o'clock when you start to do something doesn't have a great impact at 3:30 in the afternoon. But if they get a reminder at 3:30 in the afternoon, they're more likely to take action immediately. Group support. People have an identity. I am this way. And when they see others changing, they start to believe it's possible for them to change too. So when the entire group is making changes, it gives them the understanding and ability to change themselves. And daily encouragement. From the Fogg behavior model, keeping that motivation high is critical for how those triggers consume. So you do that by offering enough information, easily consumable tips on how to do it so that your ability increases. When you have all those components together, you're more likely to take action. So that's what I did, is I developed a technology, a software to help people take action, and I use that in all my programs. And I just wanted, so that's how you take program. If you're interested, I'm going to spend a couple of minutes talking about my service excellence and wellness leadership program, which is about how do you create inspiring leaders in every level of your organization, not just every level, but in the front service staff. So first of all, this program, the outcome creates intrinsic motivation. It is the what's in it for me to deliver excellent service. And when people really understand that, and it's really tied to something they actually want, then you don't have to keep pushing them and motivating them each day. They have that, bring that. So helping them connect that, it's really important. So that's one of the outcomes of the program. Number 2, it activates culture champions. So we know from this presentation that if the behavior isn't modeled, then it's really hard for people to do that externally. And if it's just you as a leader modeling the behavior, and everybody else isn't, you have an uphill battle. So one of the things that this does is it activates culture champions throughout the organization. And what that means, it makes your job way easier. These people will naturally step up to start doing the behaviors that you want to see. And yeah, there will be holdouts, but eventually they will get overwhelmed by the people who are doing it, and they will start to do that too. So activating culture champions so you can see more of the behavior you want modeled throughout your organization. Number 3, it enhances employee health and well-being in a meaningful way. It'll activate the internal and social behaviors that support the integration of your intellectual and emotional worlds. And that, according to Dr. Daniel Siegel, who is a UCLA professor of psychiatry and has written 17 books on that subject, is the foundation of health. Understanding how to integrate your emotional world and your intellectual world, that integration is key to health. So that's another outcome of the program. Increased emotional intelligence. People will learn how to be more self-aware, practice empathy, and understand how to generate positive emotions for themselves and for others. And lastly, which, seems like it should be first, but ultimately it clearly defines what service excellence is. The difference between facilitating a transaction or transactional service and transformational service, where someone leaves that interaction better than when they arrived. And giving people the understanding of how to do that is the key to having people talk about your organization and your company at the party they go to that night. So logistically, how does it work? It's a 6-week program, which is long enough to develop habits. It's weekly 1-hour sessions. This is so that you don't have to have, lose people for a whole day. We can get this in. It includes daily tips and encouragement through my software, customized hot reminders to make sure that people are anchoring the behaviors and reminders throughout the day. It's habit focused, so it isn't about just learning something, a whole bunch of ideas. It's about how do I do this again and again and again in my organization? And it has peer support because multiple people are doing it. Now, if it's only one person, clearly there's not peer support, but when an entire organization is doing it, it has a great impact. As engagement metrics, which is really nice, because ultimately, many organizations have the experience, I sent them off to create service, and now I don't know if they're doing anything different. So really being able to see as an organization what people are doing, how they're engaging with it, and on a daily basis, is this working? That's very big. And then progress celebration. When people are trying something new, most of the time they're very negative about that. I wanted to start working out more, but I missed 2 times last week. And so what happens is it creates a negative association with the new behavior. And a negative association is antithetical to habit formation. Habits are formed when you crave a reward. When you have no negative association with a behavior, it's opposite. It makes you want to avoid that behavior. So it's incredibly important in a program to make sure there's positive reinforcement for the new behavior. And one of the things that's built into the program is progress celebration, so people know where they're at. The pricing is $1,500 for one person. Every additional person is $375. So that means that 2 people are $1,875, 3 people are $2,250. If you have 10 people on your team, it's $4,875. So it's an affordable way of doing this. It's not $1,500 per person. So the more people that do it, the less the price becomes. If you want me to deliver it in person, I love working with teams in person. It can be virtual or in person. If it's an in-person, then I also charge for travel time and any expenses. If you wanted to fly me wherever you want me to be, hotel or just parking or the time it takes to get wherever you are. And this is a kind of a limited time offer. So I will be increasing these prices in the fall. And so if you want this price, you need to start before June 15th or thereabouts. If you are interested in doing that, we can talk about that. But ultimately, this isn't going to be the final price. So if you're interested, I would suggest taking action sooner rather than later. Thanks for being here. If any of this made a difference for you, here's how to stay connected. I have a new group that I've created on LinkedIn, which I'm just starting to promote, called the Inspiring Manager Collective. And this is made up of people who are interested in becoming an inspiring manager. So they're in that middle level of leadership. They understand how managers, we share ideas to enhance our ability to be inspiring as a manager and encourage each other. If you join, I'll give you something. I'll send you my ultimate guide to employee appreciation. It talks about the 3 levels of appreciation and the 4 steps to appreciating with impact. It also gives 30 examples of how to appreciate your staff in ways where they love to be appreciated, but rarely are. And the last thing is, if you aren't already connected, connect with me, follow me on LinkedIn, and click that bell. I post ideas about inspirational leadership and have the best possible experience of life and work all the time. But if you don't click that bell, chances are you're not going to get notified. So go ahead and do that. If you liked what you saw today, click that bell. And that's it. Next month, I'm really excited. I'm actually going to have a leadership panel. I'm just finalizing the conversation. So it's going to be a live conversation. We're going to talk about the 3 principles of inspirational leadership: do no harm, influence well-being, and facilitate growth. And so I've got some really exciting guests lined up. And so I'm excited about that, but I'm not quite yet ready to announce it. So now we're going to have a discussion. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.